The early part of summer this year has been a challenging growing season for many food plotters. High temperatures and very little to no rain at the wrong time in many areas has caused some landowners to start over or change their plans going into the fall planting season. But what if there was a way you could take some of the stress out of hoping for rain right after you plant? Well, meet Brad Harper at Harper Growing Solutions. He owns a blueberry farm in West Michigan where he also grows huge blackberries and raspberries, and in his nursery he grows spruce and pine trees and miscanthus grass that reaches 9 to 10 feet tall with multiple stems the very first year. What helps Brad grow a variety of plants so well is a line of liquid fertilizers and lime by Plot Doctor, for which Brad is a distributor. He also consults on other farms in West Michigan to help cash farmers maximize yield and profits. When they see the size of Brad's blueberries, they say, "Okay, just tell me what I need to do." Now, you may think using liquid products is a shortcut and will just leach through the soil with the first rain and be gone. But not with the technology and science behind Plot Doctor. Not only will these liquids stay in the root zone of the soil, but the effects are almost instant whether it rains or not. If you ever had to apply tons of lime to a food plot with very low pH, you know how much of a challenge it could be to haul several bags of pelletized lime or apply hundreds of pounds of powdered ag lime. And they can take a long time to move the needle on a pH scale. But all these issues are solved with a jug of liquid lime run through your current sprayer. A 1-gallon jug will replace 2,000 pounds of ag lime and will raise your pH almost immediately. And what makes it even better is that the liquid lime and fertilizer is cheaper per acre and can be dialed in specifically to meet the recommendations of your soil test results. And if you have any left over, it's easy to store until next year. In the last few years, Brad has been working with other deer hunters to help him grow better food plots. He's done several side-by-side comparisons that are not only easy to see the difference, but deer can taste the difference as well because those areas are getting browsed much heavier. So last week I stopped by Brad's place where he runs a lot of experiments, and he wanted to show me a test he did with sorghum plot screen from John at Northwoods Whitetail Food Plot Seed. In June, he planted everything the same day and the same way. The only difference was using granular in one plot and liquid in the other. And then for the next few weeks, the temperature soared and it never rained. Absolutely the worst case scenario. So let's go see how the sorghum is doing. All right, so what are we looking at here, Brad?
This is where I ran a trial for John at Northwoods. I ran his screen and I did his planting instructions, and we just had zero rain. So unfortunately, it's what it is.
Yep. Okay, so you planted, you did this half and half, two different ways?
Nope, this is just straight screen. I just wanted to block the road here and just running that trial for John.
Okay.
And like I said, I followed his planting instructions. It was just the fact that it was 3 weeks before we got our first inch or quarter inch of rain after I planted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it just burned up.
Okay. So what was his process?
He had the 19 and the urea at plant.
And it was drilled, broadcast?
Broadcast and then slightly disced in.
Okay. Just a light disc.
Super light, just to get that down in there a little ways.
Yep. And then did we not get any rain after that?
Yeah, no rain for 3 weeks.
Okay.
And that was when we were upper 80s, mid 90s the whole time, nothing but sun.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of guys, I think, suffered from not enough rain at a critical time.
No, exactly. And then unfortunately, it was right at planting time for most guys.
Yep. So now you got another spot that you did?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I ran 3 different trials for John. He wanted to see what we could do, kind of doing it a few different ways, utilizing a few different methods of not only fertilizing, but a few different kinds. And up here is where we ran the Plot Doctor.
Okay. So now here we got another plot that you planted John sorghum, but you did a little bit different method?
Yeah, and the first quarter here, I ran everything at a half-acre rate so we could see not only how much water per acre, but also the fertilizer at different rates to see where we're at and looking at different soils. So roughly this first quarter was planted at half-acre rate with only 15 gallons of water per acre and a half a gallon of the Plot Doctor. But the farther we get down, you can kind of see the break in there in the middle. I did a full acre rate of 30 gallons of water per acre and a whole gallon there. and clearly that water was just the biggest deal.
And then did you broadcast and lightly till this in as well?
Everything was the exact same. It all got round up the same day, tilled, broadcast, and dissed all the same time.
Okay.
The only thing was, as soon as I got done, that got granular, and then this got the plot doctor right on top with liquid lime.
So the other one that didn't turn out got granular fertilizer.
Correct.
And this one got liquid.
Correct.
Fertilizer.
Yep.
The only difference.
Only difference.
Yep. And then the near side here got 15 gallons per acre, and the far side got 30 gallons per acre. Just by what? Changing the nozzles or going over it twice?
No, just from changing my speed.
Speed. Okay. Yep. So more water resulted in a better yield. So yeah, let's go check that out.
Correct. Yeah, and that's where, when you have those sprayers, you can kind of change, as long as you calibrate that up front. I had my different speeds for my per acre basis. So when we switched up to going to the full acre rate, I slowed way down. So when I was doing that, I mean, you're just completely saturating that soil.
Right.
And that way you are giving that seed enough to germinate. And we're not so worried about that rain for at least the first initial one. I mean, you can tell it's still struggling.
Yeah.
But we've only had 1 3/4 inches over the last, this is the 9th week we've had that.
So this really shows that the more water that you can put down right after you plant, the better off you are. So if you can change out nozzles, or you're driving slower, whatever you can do to really saturate the ground rather than just putting a mist, the amount of water is really important. The more you do, the better it is.
Yeah, I mean, you can just tell it's night and day difference. And at first, it's like, well, what happened there? Even here, it's spotty, and you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. That, I mean, looking at that, we know the seed's good.
Right.
We know the method was good.
Yep.
It's just a matter of just, it was too dry. And where we had the most water, we had the best take.
Yep.
I mean, it's still not ideal, but given the amount of rain we've had and the temperatures and weather, I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, considering the conditions we had, right?
Yeah.
You know, we've had a couple good rains lately. How tall do you feel that this is going to get now that it kind of had a light start?
Well, and that's where we just actually got a 1/4 inch the other day, so we were jumping up and down for that. So I'm actually going to put some foliar nitrogen on it. That way I'm not so worried about the rain, because the forecast doesn't look very good.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll at least get some foliar nitrogen on it, and I'll be able to still get this up quite a bit.
Yeah, okay. So that'll be a liquid nitrogen.
Yep.
And again, you feel that is more effective than, say, putting down a granular urea, 4600?
Correct, and that's where, especially in this situation where we're not going to have any rain coming up, that getting it right on the leaf, having the leaf take it in directly, and I'm not so worried about having a rain wash that in.
Yep.
I can be more efficient with the liquid, and I don't have to worry about that weather.
How do you know really when to put it on and how much?
Well, and that's where, for one, John's instructions are great, and that's where if you do have a rain event, follow those instructions. That I think he calls for 100 pounds right about this time. But you'll be able to see, and you can probably see it right from here, that just you have that lighter green. It's not just super dark.
Yep.
And you get that almost yellowish look. That's when they are nitrogen deficient.
Okay. So is there a danger of burning the leaves because you're putting it right on the leaves?
With some products there is. With the stuff I'm running, there is not. The only thing that you want to think about, which anytime you're spraying anything, you want to look at temperature, obviously your wind, but once it gets past roughly 87 degrees is where we kind of draw the line, the cutoff, that once those plants go from that doing photosynthesis to above 87 degrees, they go into transpiration, and they're not going to take that in like they would otherwise. That once it gets that hot, you're not going to get as good of results.
So you can see that using liquid fertilizer with water really made a huge difference in that sorghum screen. But it really all starts with the right amount of nutrients in the soil, and the only way to achieve that is with a soil test. So in this next segment, Brad is going to analyze a couple soil tests from one of my clients to help you understand what some of the numbers and letters mean, why phosphorus numbers might always be high on your test results, and how he tailor makes a batch of liquid fertilizer with other micronutrients to really dial in what your soil needs, which you just can't get from regular 19 granular fertilizer.
All right, well, looking at this soil test now, this one is from A&L. I really like their layout. For one, they actually give you organic matter and CEC numbers, to where some tests actually don't give you that, which those are two really big pieces of information, not only when we're looking at lime recommendations, but also for nutrients and crop. CEC, that basically tells you what type of soil you have. The lower the number, the sandier the ground, the higher number, the more clay. So 5.8, that's actually more of a loamy, that's pretty good dirt. A lot of the times in Michigan, we'll have 2s and 3s, and that's where it's getting a little too sandy for brassicas, and that's normally guys always, that's their first question. And when we get a little bit higher than that, into the higher 4s and up, then that's a little better dirt where we can actually start looking at that as an option. Now here's your pH, 5.3, organic matter, we got 1.7. This is, I would say, kind of a run-of-the-mill test for Michigan. That organic matter, that's where definitely we need to start building that up. Start looking at running a no-till program, using a soil builder, and looking at spending a year or 2 or 3 of throwing oats as a nurse crop, using rye, letting that get up in the spring, just to try to start building that organic matter up. Now you got potassium, magnesium, calcium. It doesn't give you sodium on the standard test. You can opt to do that, and I always tell guys that that's a good option. It's only a couple dollars more, and for the first one, that's going to really tell you a lot, especially after years of using granular fertilizers. A lot of the times, if guys are having issues growing, but they don't have sodium on their test report, that could be one of the issues where you just have a lot of salt built up, and it's really actually preventing you from getting the crop you want. Now looking at this, as far as NPK goes, the first number in the fertilizer is your nitrogen, the middle number is your phosphorus, and the last number is your potassium. Then we start getting into other things like the magnesium, like the calcium. This one doesn't have any micros, and you can see exactly what the micronutrients are here on the bottom right that goes through each one. And again, for the standard one, they don't do that. It wouldn't hurt if you wanted to pay a couple extra dollars to get that information up front, and at least do it once so you had it. That's not really a huge issue that's going to be a make or break for your plot at first. It's just when you start getting into really wanting to fine tune that and really push the yield on your ground and put as much food as we possibly can there. So here we have phosphorus. Now on most soil samples, phosphorus is going to be through the roof, and when we look at a lot of the graph ones, we're looking at very high. So here we're at medium. That's not bad. Most of them are going to be just always very high, and a lot of the times you can tell if it's an older plot or not depending on that number. Now potassium is one as well, that when you go out, especially with the 0060, and we're dumping a lot of that on, both the phosphorus and the potassium, when you're putting the granular fertilizers out, those are both nutrients that will build up in your soil, because in granular, the nutrients themselves are not protected. And we start talking about, bring you back to chemistry class, with a positive charge and the negative charge. So soil has a negative charge, and both of those have positive charges. So because that's not protected, you really lose your efficiency. And that's why on these soil samples, when we're testing what's in the dirt, that the phosphorus and potassium both are normally very high. So looking at this one, where we're medium in our phosphorus, we're actually medium in potassium. And when you look at the recommendations, something like this is where this is one of the few where a 19 fertilizer would actually make sense, where you actually need roughly the same amount. Now, generally speaking, where you have just phosphorus through the roof, that's where it'll say you might need 120 pounds of phosphorus or 160 pounds of potassium, which is potash, same thing. But when you're looking at that and the numbers are kind of all over the board, well, that's where a 19 might not be your best bet. Just because you only need 120 phosphorus, but you needed 160 potassium, well, you're just kind of throwing your money away there, according to their recommendations. Now, looking at other types of inputs that we can make, something that either the nutrients are protected and or utilizing the soil sample to kind of custom make an input program to really dial in exactly what we need without having all the waste, and or especially with phosphorus, we don't want to put down more than we need to just because we know that it's going to have a lot easier time to tie up in the soil with granular fertilizers. Okay, and just by glancing at this sample here, I can tell that this is a newer plot. Main reason being that our phosphorus is low, potassium is low. Now, a lot of guys always ask me too about magnesium and calcium, and because this magnesium is super high like that, my guess is that it's a high clay soil, and it is. It's a super high CEC, 19, so it's really heavy in clay, and that's where you have, generally speaking, higher magnesium levels, and all that means is that your soil is tighter. If we added more calcium, the magnesium level is actually going to end up balancing itself out because calcium will open the dirt up compared to magnesium. But back to the newer plot, just because the phosphorus and potassium levels are low, that's where, and here's a perfect example, where you got 105 phosphorus but 200 potash. Well, that triple 19 really isn't going to do what you want there. So that's something that one benefit by going a different route other than granular, going a liquid route or more of a customized route, that we can really dial in exactly what you need for that dirt, for the crop, and put exactly what we need on there without having to waste any money or time, and get exactly the nutrients that we want there. So looking at this test where you got a really high or pretty high CEC number of 19 and your magnesium is very high, that's something where normally what should be done is a calcium input. Now, a lot of the times if you're running granular fertilizer, that'll be gypsum, and we're going to need to add quite a bit. Now, another route we can take is if we add a different type of calcium, a liquid form, and we can actually go in with pretty small rates and get these a lot more balanced in a lot faster time period to not only affect the crop right away, but we're going to be able to make those smaller inputs for each crop and just put that calcium down as we need it. Looking at these recommendations, that's where if we have 105 pounds of P2O5 per acre, and we're looking at a triple 19, well, the triple 19, they're giving you those numbers based on a per 100 pounds. So in order to get 105 pounds of phosphorus, that's not just 5 bags of triple 19, because we're actually looking at pounds of that nutrient per acre. So in order to make that happen, that's not 5 bags, that's going to be 10 bags.